So, welcome to class. Let's look at what we'll be doing in this course. So, this course will let you, the student or the learner, have knowledge and skills in direct cutting techniques. You also have the knowledge and skills to undertake creative projects and patterns for children's and adult wear. If we talk about adult wear, anything adults wear, shirts, dress, blouses, skirts, whatever it is. So the objectives, these are the goals of the course. By the end of the course, you'll be able to explain certain terms and technicalities that are associated with freehand. Apply freehand cutting to produce various garments. And then you familiarize with the freehand cutting process and how it could be used to produce a variety of garments. So you are going to learn how to use freehand once you measure the body and then how to transfer those measurements onto the fabric directly and cut. Basically, that is what we are going to be doing in this course. So let's look at the assessment that we know already. So let me move on to the items we need for this course. You have gotten the list already. So the normal things that we use to sew, we have most of them already. So we just continue using them, except for maybe when we get to the zips and hook and eye bars, we buy them as and when we need them. Okay. Then the first question is, what is a pattern? What is a pattern? The reason why I added in fashion is because assuming you want to search for what is a pattern on the internet, it will give you a different thing. But once it's in fashion, it is going to give you the meaning of pattern in fashion in the cycle we are looking for. Because I can also go and type maybe for communication skills English, what is a pattern? It will give me the definition in that line. If I just type it wide, what is a pattern? It will write so many things for me. So what is a pattern in fashion design? Tell me, though it is here. What is a pattern?
It is a design. It is designed to guide middleware or crafts.
Pattern designed to guide a needlework or craft. Needlework. Are you sure?
Yes.
Yes.
Patterns when you
Let us hear you. Let us hear you.
it's when you use your measurements to grab the style you want to sew on a paper.
On paper. Right? Pattern. What is a pattern?
It's when you draft the style you want to do on a piece of paper to trace on the fabric.
On a piece of paper to trace on fabric. All right, so first of all, we all know that a pattern is made, what we use here is made on paper, right? We have so many different papers. We know of the brown paper, but there's also bond paper. The bond paper is the white ones that they use also for making pattern. So we make, first of all, a pattern is a template. It is a template from which portions of a garment is traced onto the fabric before being cut out and assembled. Patterns are regularly made of paper. So like I mentioned, we have the bond paper, which is the white one. We also have the brown paper. Usually in our fashion schools, these are some of the things we mostly use here. Okay, so it is a template. So if you have your paper, even with pattern drafting, you need to measure yourself or whoever you want to stitch for. You take the proper body measurements and then you transfer those measurements onto the paper to make a template of the body. It's like you are drawing the shape of your body on it. So you end up making your bodice block, your skirt block according to scale or whoever you are sewing for. And then so you get a template of the size of the body or the shape of the body, and then from there you would lay your fabric and put the template on the fabric before you do any form of cutting. So pattern deals with templates. Are we clear on that? Good. Now, what is before we go to what is freehand cutting, we have different forms of patterns. Here in a fashion school, you may end up creating your own patterns, drafting your own blocks to create your own basic patterns. A basic pattern is is a template that is created from your basic measurements. There are no style lines or designs inculcated in it. It only has basic designs or details like dots. Even with the dots, if you want to style it or alter them, unless you are working with a particular design. So at that stage, they are basic design. So, but even with the basic design, somebody can decide to stitch a basic dress and still work once the person applies the correct finishes to it. So, with the patterns, we have measurements or sizes, okay, standardized sizes. The already made patterns come in sizes. That is why we have size 12. When you go to market to buy clothes, we have size 12, we have size 14, size 16, size 8, size, and it continues like that. So, and the dresses are also stitched according to the size, especially this happens especially if it is a mass production sector, you know. So, and also we have other patterns you can also buy. They are on the market. You can buy them and also use them to sew. Some of them are not even basic. They are in a particular style or design, and at the same time in a particular size. So we can have, for example, let's say maybe you want to sew a flare skirt. So that flare skirt pattern, we have it in size 8, we have it in size 12. We are the same design, but we have them in different sizes because it's been graded to standard. You'll be doing grading in your pattern drafting classes. So when you get there, you understand the grading. You will have a measurement for size 8, and you can grade the same design to size 12 without going to measure a size 12 person and coming back to do draft. Use the same thing to grade. It's like you're adding on the measurement. You can even decrease it. Okay, it's called grading. So pattern provides us with these opportunities or advantages. We'll be doing advantages of pattern drafting in this same lesson soon. Then methods of obtaining patterns. How do we obtain patterns? There are two major ways of obtaining patterns. We have flat pattern making and draping. What is draping? Flat pattern making, you know. What is draping? How is it done?
It's when the fabric is placed on a mannequin and then pinned to your desired style. Then after that, you take it off and then sew. That's my understanding.
Okay. Yes, you said you are not, you don't know. Is that it? That is why I want to show you a video of what draping is. So you create your patterns. You can create your patterns by flat pattern, whereby you have your design, and then you have your measurements as well. and then you put your measurements or you draft your measurements on paper to get the template. That is the flat pattern making because your template is flat, it's in 2D, two dimensional form. But the draping is done on the dummy. Okay, the dummy we have two. We have two types of people. Some say mannequin. The mannequin is the one that looks like the human being and is in the rubber. I mean, we have different materials that have been used for the mannequins now. They are the ones that we display dresses on. For example, when we want to sell those dresses in shops, the dummy are the ones that have the foamy parts. Those ones you can drape on it and pin, and then do certain adjustments. You can even add if the size is size 12, and with your measurement, the size is size 14. There are parts you can add to set the parts of the body that you need more flesh, and then you add them, and then you do your draping on it. So you basically put your fabric over the mannequin and use a pencil to manually draft out your design. It's like you are drawing, but you'll be pinning around the shape of the body. So with the dummy you are using, at the time of draping, it's assumed that that dummy is up to size. Do you understand? Whether the way the dummy is, the size is okay with what you are doing, or if you need extra size, you pad it. You pad those areas until it is equal to the same measurement you want. Because once you put your fabric over it and you drape and you pin and you draw out the silhouette of your design and you cut, you have created your pattern. So since some of you are not sure of what draping is, we are not going to watch the whole video. Just watch a
Here are
section of
5
it.
reasons why I love using Creative Fabrica.
Then
They have tons
we
of
move
pre-made
forward.
designs that I'm already allowed to use commercially and for print on demand. Number 2, they have the best fonts. Seriously, the best.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Chapka, a fashion designer with over 20 years of experience and a sewing educator. And I'm really excited you're here to share another sewing adventure with me today. Welcome to Sewing Anastasia. A lot of people are pattern drafting their garments, and I feel like sometimes there's a lot of fit issues when you're pattern drafting because you don't have the actual form in the body that you're creating the pattern on, right? You have flat paper. The benefits of draping are that you have the dress form that's your size right here, and you can get rid of all the fit issues and see exactly what it's going to look like when it's on you. How great is that? I love it. So maybe you're draping and you're
So she has
okay, so
started,
you can see how we have
but
top
she's
of the
trying to
neckline,
mark
over and
the
down,
areas of the
and same
dummy.
here,
I want
over and down.
a portion
now what we're
where
going to do is
the
take
fabric has
out
been put
the
over the
bottom
dummy. So
of the bust here.
let's see.
Fabric here for my center front because I know that is the straight grain. So the first thing I'm going to drape is the bust here. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my muslin at center front. So I'm just going to be draping half of this because we only need half because we can always cut two. So you don't want to pull your muslin super tight, but you just want it to drape nicely over it. So we are going to drape the top of it so I can see the tape through this, which is great. So that way we can go back and draw on it. I'm just going to put a few pins in here to hold it in place so it doesn't move. I'm going to drape it around to the side.
Now I'm going to forward it. So
And so
you
now
have an
on the
idea
bottom,
of
I
what
have
it is,
pleats
right?
on my bust.
We'll be
So now we
going
can
into
go
it
ahead
later.
and create these little pleats and put a pin in them. I have my pleats marked, I have all my style lines marked, and now all
So you can see she has created her design. Let's assume that this is all she's looking out for. Once she's done, you see the side seam, she will mark it. She will mark the side seam. When she's done, she will cut out that pattern piece. So she has created a pattern piece for a design already. In this case, she's not going to put any tape measure on anything to measure. The measurement is the dummy is equal to the measurement she's already looking for. So she only drapes on it and that ends it. Okay, so you have an idea of the drape. We'll be doing more of that. So let's go to our slide. So the flat pattern making, like I have explained already, and we all know already, involves the taking of the accurate measurements of a dress form or a figure, and then measurements are turned into pattern using paper. We won't talk too much because we already know what it is. But I want you to also note that this method can also be done digitally and printed out in paper using the accurate measurements. I think I've shown you a video of mine before. I created patterns with computer. I can take your measurement, create patterns on the computer up to scale. It won't come out as big as you see it. But when I finish creating all your patterns on the computer and I connect it to a printer and I print it, it will come out with scale. So if your hip is 100 cm and divided by 4, and I created it with a 1/4 scale, it will come out like that. Once I print it, the patterns will come out like that. All I need to do is to cut and then place it on fabric and then cut the fabric. So you can also create patterns digitally, not only on paper. Okay, let's continue. So let's look at, we've looked at the draping already, but let's see yes. So draping, these are all draped designs. The picture here, these are all draped designs. They are not yet stitched. So here, a specific garment design or style is achieved. Muslin fabric is draped and pinned around a dress form or figure to achieve a specific design. The fabric that is normally used for draping is called muslin. It is, yes, it's soft and it drapes easily. So we normally use that, though some people use calico and the rest, but the muslin is easy to use because of the way it drapes. So after draping and after achieving the style of the design, the pieces are used as patterns. So you now have your pattern and put it directly on your fabric and you cut. This time around, no, okay, hip divided by 4, then you put it on your paper and you do that. That's another thing. All right, any questions up to this point? Should we continue? Right. So now we come to freehand cutting. Freehand cutting. What is freehand cutting? I asked indirectly, and some of you said that freehand cutting. What is freehand cutting? Like I mentioned earlier on. So it is the process of drafting out designs and directly cutting them out on the fabric. Freehand cutting involves garment construction without the use of commercial patterns. The commercial patterns are the already made ones that you go and buy. Even we have one commercial pattern that we have the patterns on it, and they have even, you can grade on the pattern, on the commercial pattern, and then trace out your design and use. We have that also. I don't know if you've seen that before, but as time goes on, we'll have a look at such a commercial pattern. We have all the basic blocks on it, including the trousers also. Now, what are some of the merits or advantages of freehand cut? If you see merits, it means advantage. Demerits is disadvantages. So, what are some of the advantages of freehand cutting? The garment design is drawn on the fabric directly in freehand cutting technique. So, the whole sewing process takes less time. You don't go drafting on paper. It also lessens your cost, because if it is pattern drafting, it means that you now have to go and buy paper. If you have freehand cutting, you are not thinking of paper at the moment. You are just going to use your tape measure, your measurements, your chalk, whatever you need, and trace your measurement directly, or your design directly onto the fabric. Once you do that, you cut. But remember, after cutting, you don't have any patterns to use for anything again. You have to go over the same process if you have to do the same design for another person. I hope you are, yeah, they are all part of disadvantage, but we'll come to it. So another merit is the designs are tailored to the model's measurement. This guarantees a perfect fit. Why are they saying this? They are assuming that the patterns have been made in certain sizes, like size 12, size 14, size 8, size 10, size this and that. Now, if you tell me now that you are size 12 and you choose a design and I have that design in size 12 and I pick it and I pick that pattern and then I cut and sew for you, size 12 will fit you, but it won't fit your exact shape. True or false? Because you see our shapes down here, we in Africa, our shapes differ. Someone's bust can be size 16, her waist be size 12, then the hip size 14. It varies. So for us, the custom sewing, bespoke garment, you measure the freehand, you measure your body, the person's body measurements, exact measurements, and use it to sew. Even if you use it to make a different pattern for the person before you sew, it fits closely. But over here, they are looking at freehand. Freehand is measure the person, transfer the measurements onto the fabric directly, and cut. So in that case, it's assuming that the dress or the garment is going to fit the person perfectly, because we are not using any commercial pattern here to draft anything. Do we get it? Then another advantage, you spend less money. I have mentioned it. Less money is spent because you don't buy paper. You don't go and shop to be buying pattern papers, tracing papers, other extra materials needed in pattern drafting. You don't buy any of those things. You need few tools and equipment to start and end your sewing. Then I don't know why this thing is not moving. So let's look at the demerits or disadvantages of freehand cutting. One, once the fabric is cut, it is difficult to make adjustments and modifications to the design, ultimately leading to fabric wastage. If you cut and you claim you have checked and mistakenly there's been an oversight and you cut, you can't go back again. The only solution is to go and get the same fabric, buy it, and cut, trace your your measurement, put your measurements on it again, draw your whatever you need to draw, and make the correction and cut a new one. My question is, what if the fabric was for some other person? Number two, what if that person actually imported the fabric? What if the person ordered the fabric specially for him or herself as customized? What will you do? You get it? Where are you going to get the fabric from? You have added costs to your work. In fact, you won't even get the profit. You won't get anything on your money. Because by the time you finish buying that cloth with the if clause I've just used for this sentence now, your money self will go into it. In addition to what the person is going, what the person is paying you is like, it is what you have used to buy, what you have wasted. So that's one of the biggest disadvantages of freehand cutting. So I want to ask a question. How do you prevent such mistakes? If you don't want to go through this mistake ever, how do you prevent it? Meanwhile, you are using freehand cutting to sew. Okay, let's assume you are using freehand cutting to sew right now. A client's order. How do you prevent such a mistake?
And by getting the accurate measurements,
Yes, we'll get accurate measurements. That's for that one.
you should go over and over about the whole thing.
Yes, you can go over and over about the whole thing, but do you know that sometimes our mind is psyched? Once you've done the first one, your mind is telling you you've done the correct thing. You read through the second one. If you see any mistake, you have seen it. The third time, you won't see mistake again. Unless you give it to a third party to go through it and see if she or she will recognize something that is unusual. And most of the times, the mistake is there clear, but you would never use, yes, until you get to the point where you need to make use of it before you realize that something has happened. So there's something you need to do that will limit or even avoid or prevent this mistake totally. What will you do? Sorry?
Test it.
What?
Make a prototype.
Yes, that will solve the problem somehow. Okay, but I'll mention something. Before you start any design, because you're going to use freehand, first of all, you don't just start cutting all like the way the roadside people do it. They have the design in their head and then they want to cut. Those who don't have the designs in their mind or their head, probably the person chose the design on the calendar. So they are seeing that this is even better. They are seeing a picture of the design. If you don't have a picture of the design, you are a fashion designer. Draw it, illustrate it, however you draw it to understand. You are doing your own work. You do illustration, you illustrate it, you draw it. After drawing, that's not the end. Please sit down, then you write. My back, according to the design, I'm supposed to cut the back 2 pieces with a zipper allowance of this. I'm supposed to cut the front 1 or 2, or is it half? Is it symmetric? What is your design? You need to analyze the design on paper. So my front, I have 4 pieces, so I have to cut 4 pieces. These 4 pieces, I need to leave allowance, seam allowance around all of the 4 pieces before I join them to become 1 piece. You write it. So front, I'm cutting 4 pieces. Seam allowances, half an inch, half an inch, half an inch before I join. You write it. My sleeve, is it long? Is it short? How is it? You analyze all that, and when you finish, you know that you are cutting 25 pieces, and that 25 pieces you have done where to add seam allowance and where not to, and the kind of opening you are using and all that. So once you've analyzed and gone through and you are sure that thing is correct, there is no way you cut and make any mistake. Once you cut, you take, you cut, you take, you cut, you take. I have ever cut a dress at the back. I forgot to add a zipper allowance because I didn't analyze or write it. My mind was telling me I know too much. So I did it. And the front, I didn't have zipper allowance. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Someone will say, Madam, so at this point, you introduce the zip at the side. What if the design you are working with doesn't allow for the zip to be at the side? The best position for the zip for that particular design at that time was the back. What will you do? Then you'll be thinking of cutting an extra 2.5 centimeter piece and joining it. When you join it, when you're about to sew the zip, that is when you realize that you fucked up. So, and you can only do that to your dress. If it is somebody's dress, don't dare. So basically, you can cut the back. You understand me? So that is the best thing to do. You analyze because you know that this thing is going straight onto the fabric to cut. Do we get it? Good. So in freehand cutting too, you can only use drafts for the person it was made for, unlike the pattern drafting cutting technique. Like I mentioned, once you all want the same design, Meanwhile, your measurements are different. So if I sew for A right now, the same design, once I do the pattern drafting on the fabric, with chalk and I cut, that is the end. I have to go through the process again for the second person, go through the process again for the third person. What if I have a contract to sew for a school? What am I going to do? I have to be going through the process for 100 children like that till I finish. Would you get tired? In this case, the best thing would have been the pattern. You get a pattern for the smaller size and then you grade them to the bigger sizes. So once you put your pattern and you know that 5 children are in this category, then you cut for them and you keep moving on. I don't know if you understand. I mean, that is one advantage of the pattern, but with freehand cutting, you get it that way. You go over the process from the beginning to the end. Pattern will not treat you like that, especially if it has to do with the same design you're working with. Even if it is not about the design, you still have a basic block. So you don't go back to go and do waist divided by 4. No. Do we get it? Any questions up to this point? Okay. So let's look at our slide, the last ones. And then we end this particular lesson. So let's look at the advantages of pattern drafting. Now we know what pattern drafting is already. So the patterns, they have instructions on them. If even with the ones we draft ourselves manually, we realize that we put instructions on it. What are some of the instructions we find on patterns?
The pattern name,
The pattern name,
pattern number,
the number,
number,
number of cards, the symbols on it. The symbols are what communicates mostly over here. Okay, so all those are instructions on the pattern. So in a production house where we have different people for different tasks, if the pattern moves from the pattern maker to the cutter, the person that is going to cut the patterns, once the person takes the pattern and reads, the person understands what to do with that pattern, how many to cut, where to cut it, whether he or she is supposed to cut on a straight grain, off grain, bias, whatever, it will be there. The person will see, so the person will cut accordingly. Okay, so they have instructions, and the patterns can be reused again. It can be reused. Unlike freehand cutting, there's nothing to reuse when you are starting from the beginning. But this one, you can put it down several years to come. If you need it again, you will reuse it. Okay, so it saves time, especially if many pieces of particular design in a size are to be made. What they are saying is that if we have a lot of like the example I gave, we are sewing a particular design and we are producing thousands of that same design. What will you do? You have patterns, so it makes the work easy for you to cut. So it means you can cut a lot of fabrics at the same time. But if it were freehand cutting, you can't do that. You'll be cutting one. Okay? So it reduces trial and error in sewing as well. Because once, before the patterns were approved that, oh, these patterns are good, they were tried. So you know that this pattern here is correct and it's a standard. You don't need any corrections here or there. Then, unlike freehand cutting, mistakes can be corrected by modifying the pattern, therefore reducing fabric waste. So let me end it there. I have already mentioned it already. If you make a mistake on your pattern, that is paper. It is easy. You can make a correction. Sometimes you just need to attach another paper somewhere to extend something, which is quite easier. But if it were freehand now, you may end up buying the whole fabric to recut something that you can't do anything about. Okay, so pattern drafting gives you the opportunity to correct something at the pattern stage before you even get to the fabric stage. Then Templates created in pattern drafting are durable if properly cared for. As for templates, it depends on how you store them. So for me, mostly I prefer hanging them like the way we hang our dresses. And your patterns are not supposed to be crumbled. They are supposed to be, as you know, one funny thing about you, but you don't understand. When you buy bond paper or brown paper, you see the way it is straight. Your pattern, by the time you finish drafting and you cut, your pattern is supposed to look like that. You are not supposed to have anything crumbling on the final. I'm talking about the final part. The final part is supposed to be as straight as that. But at the end of the day, people's patterns are, even if you say go and bring your final pattern, we have folded it into 10 folds. So by the time the pattern comes, there are so many lines on it. Why? You are reducing and expanding the measurements of your paper. So what people do is they go and iron the how do you call it, grey baft, I'm saying grey baft, the brown paper, which is not the best, truthfully. So I find hanging of the patterns as the best way to store them. And of course, you don't store them where there's moisture. You have to make sure the place you are storing them is always dry. There's always air passing, especially if you are into production, because one day you'll come back to that design. Okay, so and they are durable if you care for them well. Yes. So templates can be tested with masking before cutting the fabric. The process like we were talking about, the sample. So if you have your pattern and corrected pattern, you can make samples first with them. If you make the sample will tell you if there's a mistake, something will fit properly or not. If it doesn't, you make the corrections on the pattern before you use it to cut the fashion fabric. The fashion fabric is the fabric you'll be using for the real garment. Do we understand it? Then, these templates will enable the starting of a clothing line without stress. I think we've mentioned it already. So if you have patterns, the patterns that you will be making from here, if you like, you can intentionally start keeping them properly, because you can, like I'm saying, you can use the same design and grade for different sizes. Even your size, you can use it to grade for me. Once you have my measurements, you can easily grade to my size without having to go all over the whole drafting process. You understand? So in the form of a clothing line or mass production, it is easy for you to do repeated designs or patterns. Any questions here? We continue. All right, so So 6. Templates can be graded to smaller and larger sizes, unlike drafts from freehand cutting. I think I have spoken extensively on that already. So if you intend to start a ready-to-wear clothing line, the pattern drafting cutting technique will be very handy. It's just like the previous point we just made. It's the same thing. So, but this one is ready to wear. It's stitched on the market already, and people will come in to buy. No matter, though sizes in Africa differ, like I just mentioned. One person can be having 3 sizes on the on the body because of the way our shape is. But even with that, we still buy with sizes. With our ready-made garments like jeans, we do, don't we? The only thing is that maybe in most cases you may buy and may have to make little adjustments somewhere. Some of them you may be lucky not to make any adjustments, but some you may have to make certain adjustments. I realize that there's a problem with pear-shaped African figure. A pear-shaped African figure can have serious buttocks and have very, very small waist. So the person's buttock size and everything up to the down is fitting size 12. But once she wears it, because her waist is well defined, African waist, so she will have a lot of gape at the, it's called gap at the waistline. So you will have to adjust for that gap. Those are the small challenges that we have with ready to wear garments using the standardized pattern drafting sizes that we have. Okay. Right. Should we continue? So we are having the last subtitle, which is disadvantages of pattern drafting or demerits of pattern drafting. Pattern drafting can be time consuming process. Yes, because it takes a lot. Like I mentioned, if somebody is developing patterns digitally with the computer and you are doing the manual one, oh, you'll be tired. And it will take some time for you to finish. But the person doing the digital one, if the person had practiced this pattern, oh, in a click, you can even decide to cut the fabric today. But you doing the pattern, if you don't take time and you don't even have the, by the time you finish, you are even tired. You don't want to cut. One thing about creativity, designing, creative persons, if you are tired, don't do it. Oh, you will spoil it. Yeah. So, hey, so it is more expensive as it requires special tools and extra materials like French curves, brown papers, curves, set squares, tracing wheel. The list continues, it's long, you know already. So you will spend more money in that. Then the third one, then the clothes or the garments may not be a perfect fit, especially if you do not test the template before the pattern is sewn with the fabric. We have mentioned this, I've told you the challenges of standardized patterns. We have spoken about it, about the shapes. So if you even have a commercial pattern, an already made pattern you bought, it is best to make a test copy to be sure that this thing I have bought according to the size I think I am, the waistline will fit exactly. If it doesn't fit, you can make alterations to the pattern before you use it to cut your fashion fabric. Do you understand? And it is a disadvantage because it's like you are going through another form of process before you could get exactly what you want. So we are in our next lesson. We'll be doing guidelines for freehand cutting. We'll end our lesson here, but we're doing guidelines for freehand cutting. All the things I spoke about, there are some in there. So at this point, do we have any questions on what we have done so far? We have done the definition of freehand cutting, definition of pattern drafting, the advantages and disadvantages of pattern drafting. We have seen all those. Do we have any questions on that? Do we have any questions on that? Right. Any questions before we end our lesson for today? Yeah, okay. All right. So, in the absence of any questions, we end our lesson for today. In our next lesson, like I said, we'll be doing guidelines for freehand cutting, since that is the course we are going to